ain't seen the sunshine.
Earlier today, I had the privilege of sitting down with Congressman Rick Crawford, and he talked about Obamacare. Listen to this.
Gentlemen, welcome back to the program. We've got Congressman Rick Crawford on the line. Rick, I'm glad that you're here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So we haven't done this in a little while. I have been, down in Little Rock a whole lot, covering what's happening at the state level. And in the meantime, you're having to handle all of the curveballs up in Washington, D.C. How are things going?
Well, I don't know. You tell me. There are some curveballs and stuff. We're just trying to make contact and do what we can to try and move things forward. It's a little bit challenging, and it's as much of a challenge as is the fact that it's such a task getting the president's cabinet populated, because the folks on the other side are doing everything they can to delay, and they know they can't stop it, but if they can delay it, it can cause problems and embarrassment for the president, and that's really their goal.
Yeah,
and is to try to embarrass the president. So I think that's as much of an explanation for why these cabinet positions haven't been filled in a very expeditious manner. And certainly we're waiting on one key for us, and that's the Ag Secretary position. And I don't even know that he's had a confirmation hearing at the committee level, let alone, that coming to the floor.
Yeah, it seems like they certainly are trying to undermine anything President Trump wants at every turn. And it certainly is slowing things down. And then, of course, you have the media, which, they're telling the Democrat base that everything is the worst that it's ever been ever for the history of mankind. So, the deck is kind of stacked against, Donald Trump in a lot of those ways. And yet a lot of people feel like, he is getting a lot of stuff done. His speech to the joint session of Congress was really well received, I feel like, by conservatives. And then, this week we kind of get to this Obamacare thing, and there's a lot of mixed feelings out there, and a lot of, I think, healthy skepticism going on. What are your thoughts so far?
Well, I think, I was sent here to try and repeal Obamacare. I think people understand that, and it was as much a motivating factor for me to even run, and then the support that we received going back to 2010 and continuing on to now. I've been sent here 4 times with one of the main priorities to be to repeal Obamacare. Now we have the opportunity to do it, but I think it's important to get it right more so than get it right now.
Yeah,
and
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, I think there's been a little bit of a rush, and I think that rush comes from feeling this impending, like, we don't deliver immediately on this, then the base is going to be unforgiving and we'll never hear the end of it. But I think what we're seeing now is the base looking at this and going, hey, what are you guys doing?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're at a point in history, I would probably say that as conservatives, as Republicans who tout small government and free market principles, kind of gut check time. Do we really believe that? And if so, are we willing to demonstrate our faith in that? And demonstrating our faith in that would be to say, okay, we know Obamacare hasn't worked. Let's get rid of that. And then let's let the free market do the heavy lifting here. So what we ought to be looking at is minimize the federal footprint in healthcare and create the market conditions to allow for the improvement of delivering healthcare. And I'm talking about driving costs down, improving quality of care, which is already, quality of care is not really even a question. We have great healthcare quality. The issue is actually getting access to healthcare, not getting access to a card that says you have healthcare insurance, but actually getting access to healthcare. And I think a lot of these solutions can be found in the free market. If we truly believe that the free market can address these issues, I think we ought to let the free market address these issues. And having said that, I think it's also important to note that we need to probably establish a glide path for that are on Obamacare now, which is essentially all of us. So what I mean by that is if we repealed Obamacare tomorrow, just a flat-out repeal with no replacement, you're going to leave a lot of people in the lurch. However, if you repealed it completely with no replacement plan other than to rely on the free market, I think it would be important to allow a glide path for the ACA to sunset, to allow people to prepare for their health care needs over a period of time, 18 months, 24 months, I don't know. But what that would also do is give us the opportunity to, as I said, create the environment for the marketplace to address the needs of our health care. Now, I'm Medicaid, Medicare notwithstanding, I'm talking about, the average American who had historically and traditionally received health care benefits from employer-based health care insurance, and then, self-employed people, giving them the opportunity to find associations, the opportunity to associate for the purpose of acquiring group health care, which wasn't, you couldn't do that even prior to Obamacare, utilizing health savings accounts, allowing medical practices to set up concierge practices, and a variety of things that could happen in the private sector, in the marketplace, to address these healthcare concerns.
I'm glad.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I'm really glad that because I couldn't agree more about the free market concept of this, and I think from a standpoint of practicality, first of all, the millions of Americans that lost their coverage because of the government, I think they can certainly sympathize with other people who have now become dependent on Obamacare to a certain extent, all of a sudden losing their insurance or their coverage or whatever. So I agree with this idea of a glide path. The biggest problem I think with that the American people have right now practically is the fact that we want to know when our premiums are going to go back to where they were. And, so whatever you guys have to do to get the price of health care, and I think the market is the exact mechanism to do that. Let me ask you this, Congressman. So what we're hearing on the TV is that, hey, well, we've got to do this in phases. And that may be true, but, it sounds to me like you want to get this right. Do you think we're doing all that we can do in this phase one, or could we be doing more?
Well, I think that there's, that they might be hiding behind reconciliation as a way to avoid some of the things that could be done, should be done. Like the three phases, and I think you and I have talked about this. First phase being this particular budget reconciliation mechanism. The second phase being the administrative phase, whereby Secretary Price has the latitude under ACA to make a lot of administrative moves, and could do that, and he certainly has the authority under the current law. And then finally, the heavy lift in the legislative action that's going to be necessary that don't fall under what's considered reconciliation, and that is tearing down the barriers for state-to-state compensation, or competition, tort reform, things of that nature that are going to require standalone legislation. And so, I get that approach. I mean, that's just sort of the mechanics of how things happen here at this level. But sometimes I think there may be some sort of maybe hiding behind a procedural rule because it might be easier to take this route. The fact of the matter is, we passed a repeal measure and sent it to President Obama, passed both chambers, sent it to the president. Of course, he's going to veto it. Well, let's do the same thing. This president won't veto it.
That's a great.
And this, a lot of people asking, scratching their head, going, "Well, heck, you did this once before. So, were you serious about it then, or are you not serious about it now, or what's the deal? Was that just so much, political theater, or that's the question that I think most people have. And I'm not trying to oversimplify this. This is a very complex issue. But at the end of the day, I think as conservatives who have campaigned on, the value of the free market and the value of smaller government and the value of reducing the government's intrusion into your private life. This is one of those sort of, seminal moments in history where it's put up or shut up time, in my opinion. And that's what I think is frustrating a lot of people. It's certainly frustrating our folks back home.
Yeah.
And there are folks up here, like me, who are also kind of scratching our heads going, what's the deal with that? Why aren't we taking advantage of this opportunity to really demonstrate what we believe in? And we have faith in the free market's ability to address these concerns. Look, back in 2009, when people were talking about, wouldn't it be nice if your son or daughter could stay on your health care until they were age 26, get them through college, get them, to a point where they can acquire gainful employment and get their health care on their own, but give them a little bit of help. That was a naturally occurring market dynamic. There was demand there. The insurance companies were willing to stand up and meet that demand, and they could do it. Certainly there was a cost associated with it, but that was a private sector market dynamic that was addressed there. And then, pre-existing conditions. Well, why are we trying to make this pre-existing condition thing so hard? Prior to 2009, pre-existing conditions, really the only way you could meet kind of at the heart of this argument was creditable coverage. Maintain creditable coverage through COBRA benefits when you're between employers. Well, heck, if you're between employers, odds are you can't afford the $1,200 a month premium for COBRA to make sure that you don't get an exclusion when you get your next health care insurance. So let's talk about portability. And I'm not talking about the convoluted explanation that they're offering for portability now.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a real portability strategy that allows you to take ownership of your health care policy when you're at employer A and you choose to go to work at employer B. You can still keep your health care at employer A provided that you maintain the premiums. What that means is you're still in the group. It's just that employer A is not paying for the premiums. So if premiums for your family were $300 a month and the employer is kicking in half for you, $150, well, that means you're going to carry that policy with you, but now you're on the hook for $300 a month out of your pocket. Well, that's better than $1,200 a month. That's a heck of a lot more affordable. So just let's sort of think about how we can tweak some of these rules to allow an individual to hold on to their policy until such time as they move on to that open enrollment in their next employer, or until such time as they secure a superior product, and then they don't have to worry about falling through the cracks or not maintaining creditable coverage and worrying about whether they're going to get an exclusion because they had a back injury or any number of other things that could have happened that might cause them to lose a certain portion, if not all, of their health care coverage.
Yeah. We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford, and I have to say, Rick, I really am encouraged by the fact that one of the first things that you said when we started talking about this is the reason you were elected was to get rid of this, and I really appreciate that perspective. Your colleague, your fellow delegate, Senator Tom Cotton, he tweeted out yesterday, number one, House health care bill can't pass Senate without major changes. To my friends in the House, pause, start over, get it right. Don't get it fast. Number two, GOP shouldn't act like Democrats did in Obamacare. No excuse to release a bill Monday night, start voting Wednesday with no budget estimate. Number three, what matters in the long run is better, more affordable health care for Americans, not House leaders' arbitrary legislative calendar. I know they're different chambers, and sometimes the House and the Senate can be adversarial, but what are your thoughts on those statements from Tom Cotton?
Well, I think what he's pointing out there is the frustration that we're going to see materialize, and already is materializing, not only in the Senate but in the House. In that, there are a couple of things to consider here. Think back to 2009 when this whole Obamacare monstrosity was foisted on us by Nancy Pelosi and others, that we're gonna find out what's in the bill after we pass it. They brought this thing about through reconciliation, so they used that tactic, and it was perfectly fine for them to do that then, and nobody said anything about it. But there was never an opportunity to debate the bill. There was never an opportunity to offer amendments to the bill, and so it's probably reasonable to think that Republicans at that time would have withheld their support because they weren't being heard, not given an opportunity even to debate. And so I don't want to see a repeat of that in reverse. What I'd like to see, a couple of things. One, I'd like to see a CBO score on this. I'd like to get an idea what's the price tag. I mean, heck, man, I'd like to kick the tires and look at the price tag before I buy this car. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's that. The other thing is, I don't care if it takes a month of debate on the floor. I think we owe the American people a level of transparency that they've not experienced before when we're talking about a piece of legislation that's going to affect probably greater than 1/6 of our total economy. So let's bring this thing to the floor under an open rule. What's wrong with that? I mean, yeah, it's going to be time-consuming. But as I said before, it's more important to get it right than it is to get it right now. I understand the sense of urgency from the administration's perspective because they've set a timeline for trying to get tax reform before August. That may not be a realistic goal if we're going to truly achieve a productive Obamacare repeal and replace that genuinely reformed health care and respects the wishes of the people. Because when I say the people, this is the people's house, that I work in. I'm here to be a voice for my constituents. And if I don't get the opportunity to make my constituents' voice heard, then why are we here? And so my problem is that this is such a great idea. It'll pass. It's not perfect, so let's at least talk about what we can do to improve it. Let's give the opportunity for some people to offer some ideas and some suggestions. And maybe those suggestions will be taken up, maybe they won't. But I think it's worth the time and the effort. And as I said, we could debate this thing for a month, and I'd be okay with that. If that's how long it takes to get it right, so be it. I just think that we're doing our constituents a major disservice by just rushing through this thing just because we want to, point to, check the box. Okay, we did that. Now let's go do tax reform. Mm-hmm. And now let's go do this, let's do that. This is a huge deal. And I think it requires a heck of a lot more attention than that.
Okay, so last question here. As you know, Arkansas was one of the states in the South that expanded Medicaid. And originally, we were supposed to only have 215,000 people on the program. Now we have like 340. And so my question is, what are you hearing on the Hill about these match rates going back to maybe traditional 70-30? Because, if that's the case, our state budget, we might be in a budget crisis. So what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts today are what they were when this whole thing came about under Governor Beebe, and that was, the Obama administration is going to be more generous than any other administration, Republican or Democrat, because they can be. They needed to be to get this health care law passed. They needed to make promises that they couldn't keep, and they did. They made all kinds of promises because they wanted to make people believe that this was the way to go, and they needed the votes to make it happen. But the fact remains, reality sets in now, post-Obama, and best-case scenario, you're going to go down to a 70-30 match. That was going to happen regardless, whether or not Hillary Clinton was in the White House or Donald Trump. That was something that should have been anticipated and wasn't. And so now we're going to look at, and look, I've tried to be as deferential as I can be to my colleagues and my counterparts in the State House and State Senate. This is now theirs to wrestle with, and what we're trying to do up here is to everything we can do to create the environment for them to come to a productive solution to what they're faced with at the state level. So, but the reality is this, that, you expect a 70-30, that's probably best-case scenario, and I haven't done the math, but I would anticipate that's going to leave a pretty major budget hole at the state level. And so this is what I'm talking about when we rush through this. We're potentially going to leave our state in the lurch, not just Arkansas, but all the states. And I just don't think that we need to try and ram this through like Nancy Pelosi and her crew did back in 2009. And that's just not who we are, and it shouldn't be how we operate.
Congressman Rick Crawford, I appreciate it, sir, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks, appreciate it.
5 feet high.